unfortunately for Sean, we lost to Dricus, and I think that you don't really appreciate it when you have it. And now I see that fire underneath him. I think that these belts, Robert Follis used to always say to us, there's a reason why guys fall down on their knees and cry when they win their first title, because the road there wasn't easy, and I want him to know that and appreciate that, because, I've worked with guys like Joe Benavidez who, you wish that those guys were able to see that top of the mountaintop, right, to get that title. So as hard as this sport is, I hope that he now appreciates it and understands the importance of being able to call yourself a world champion.
All right, everybody, let us say hello to one of the best coaches in the game. And as you can see, fellow Boston Celtics fan, Eric Nicksick. There it is. He's off to Australia very, very soon to corner Sean Strickland as he looks to regain the UFC middleweight title in the main event of UFC 312, February 8th against Dricus du Plessis, a rematch. Eric, always great to see you, my friend. Thank you for doing this for your log. Just a whole bunch more miles.
Yes, sir. You too, Mike, man. Great to see you as always.
We are getting very close to this fight, Eric, knocking on the door of this big rematch from one of the closest title fights in UFC history a little over a year ago. I know Sean Strickland is ready to fight at the drop of a hat at a local grocery store or a pumpkin patch, the Octagon, but preparation-wise, work-wise, how dialed in, how ready is Sean Strickland for this opportunity that awaits him?
Nah, he's been looking great, man. And he's been looking great, but it's been even better having Johnny Eblen in the room. Johnny came in and did the last 2.5 weeks of camp with us, and just always such a great commodity for not only the gym, but for Sean. Championship mentality, obviously, that Eblen brings in the room, but it really raises Sean's game. There's a competitiveness that brings the best out of both of them. So everything's been great, man. And they're looking forward to Sean's last spar tomorrow, and we'll hit the road.
One of the most common qualities, I guess, if you want to call it that, and I've heard guys like Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker say similar things, that Dricus du Plessis is the best bad fighter in the world. He's just a bull, and he just does things that, from, I guess, a technical standpoint in the eyes of pundits, that you just shouldn't do.
Sure.
But boy, is it effective when you can be a hoss like that guy is. Do you agree with that to some degree, or do you believe there's more to Dricus du Plessis in his style than meets the eye?
Both. I think you can definitely see the awkwardness in his style, but that's where it is effective. Is somebody like Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya, who are such clean, proficient strikers that we call them boogers, and there's an awkwardness to these guys that make it effective here. In a lot of ways, reminds me of like Elias Theodoro back in the day. Like Elias had its awkwardness to his style, but it was super, super effective for him. And he understood what he was doing and what he was looking to accomplish when he does those things. And I think that's the best praise I can give Dricus is his self-belief, man. Like when he's doing something and the way that he sees it and visualizes it, it's effective. And, that to me, that what makes him so damn great is he believes in everything that he does, and it's effective.
We talked before their first fight. We talked after the second fight. You talked about some of the things that you could have done better, or that
Sure.
Sean could have really done better, that you're trying to sort of melt into his head. And when I asked you about Francis Ngannou versus Renan Ferreira, I asked you if Francis would wrestle, and you said yes, and he did, because he battered Pereira and knocked him dead and won in the first round. And Sean has already put out challenges to Dricus to let's just be men and do an all stand-up fight, no takedowns. But let me ask you, true or false, Sean Strickland shoots a takedown in this fight?
Oh, let's say, I want to say true. Maybe, I don't know. But that's the difference, is like Francis will listen. Francis will listen, like with Sean, like, I don't know, like half the time is he even paying attention, So I just go because I have the best seat in the house,
He's such an interesting guy. And I thought about this because I was talking to Yuri Prohashka before his fight with Jamal Hill, and he said he wants to win the light heavyweight title back, mostly because he wants to give it the respect it deserves. That when he won the belt, it was just kind of part of the plan. Like, I knew I was going to win the belt, but I don't think he understands the gravity and the meaning of
Sure.
what it meant to be a world champion. And he wants to win it back so he can rectify that and really appreciate it.
Sure.
What do you think being a UFC world champion would mean to Sean Strickland this time around? Would it feel or be any different than after he beat Israel Adesanya?
Mike, that's an amazing point. Amazing point. And I like that you draw comparisons with Yuri because, you know, he was in our gym when he was injured, when he hurt his shoulder. And I just saw how the gravity, the magnitude of that heartbreak, you know, and he handled it well. But, you know, he never was beaten to lose that belt, you know. Unfortunately for Sean, you know, we lost to Dricus, and I think that you don't really appreciate it when you have it. And now I see that fire underneath him. I think that these belts, you know, Robert Follis used to always say to us, there's a reason why guys fall down on their knees and cry when they win their first title, because the road there wasn't easy, you know, and I want him to know that and appreciate that because, you know, I've worked with guys like Joe Benavidez who, you know, you wish that those guys were able to see that top of the mountaintop, right, to get that title. So as hard as this sport is, I hope that he now appreciates it and understands the importance of being able to call yourself a world champion.
Does he ever talk to you about that, about like what that second reign would mean, like goals and things he would do with it? Or is it just Sean?
I try not to talk to him at all, to be honest with you. Yeah, of course. And I think he, you know, he understood and he knows that the level that it meant, but it carries a lot of responsibility too. And I really don't know if he was ready for that responsibility of being a world champion at that moment, you know, and I don't know how he's going to react again if he does win the thing, you know, but at the end of the day, it's like you've been there, you know, you're capable of doing it. It was a very close fight with Dricus. So, I mean, you're right there at making yourself a world champion again. And the next time that he has that opportunity, which I hope he does get, I hope he appreciates it even more.
Of course, made headlines. You told the Schmo that Alex Pereira will be the fourth man in the corner, and him and Sean obviously fought at UFC 276. And I always bring up you telling me your thoughts on that fight. It's one of the funniest stories ever, but that fight went how it went, but they've helped each other out so much since then. And it's been really cool to see their relationship flourish from the press conference and things they had to say to each other to Pereira knocking him out. And now they're competitively sparring and getting each other ready for fights. How did this all come together to get Alex in the corner for this one?
He was going to be out there. And it was just one of those things where we were looking at the corner and I knew he was going to be out there. And, you know, Johnny Eblen couldn't make it out. I was hoping to have him in the corner. Myself and Danny Davis will be there. And it was just a matter of convenience. And these are two guys that really trust one another. You know, Sean went out there to help him get ready for Khalil Roundtree. And, you know, what people don't really understand, and I see some people thinking it's like a publicity thing. It's more about the comfortability in your corner. And not only that, what Alex is going to bring to the locker room. And Sean warms up very, very hard. Sean basically fights in the back to get his eyes and his rhythm and his timing on point. Who better to be back there to help you warm up than Alex freaking Pereira, right? Like, that guy's going to help. So I see, you know, I've seen a couple comments here and there about he doesn't even speak English. He was in our corner for the last Dricus fight. He sat right behind me and he told me everything in my ear. Hey, make sure he teeps more. Make sure he jabs more. We speak MMA, right? There's enough for him to be able to say, to help, to be a resource for us. And look, if we're going to battle, who better to have in your corner than Alex Pereira? So I'll take him in any capacity that we can get. But there's a lot of deeper levels and layers of having in the corner than just him just standing there looking scary, you know? So he's going to help us a ton during fight week. And I'm excited to have him out there.
Yeah. If there's any locker room you want to hang out in before somebody gets into a fist fight, it's Alex Pereira. They're dancing around. It's just so loose back there. Right. And
100%.
The way he just eviscerates people in that octagon with how loose he is in the back before a fight. Like, how do you not want that in your corner?
Not to mention a championship pedigree, a guy who is fighting to this level and capacity time and time again, and understands the magnitude of what he's dealing with in those moments. I don't need a freaking guy to give him a speech or say all these things. That's what he has myself and Danny for. But his presence alone means a lot to us, and having him there, and I'll take him any day of the week.
Absolutely. He'll say what he needs to say with a look. He'll just look Sean in the eye, and Sean will be like, okay, Alex, that's it.
Scare the shit out of all of us in the corner. Like, fucking all right.
What do you think about Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev? Because a lot of people feel like
tough fight,
when just the talk of that fight, that Ankalaev is going to win this pretty easily, but I'm not sure about that. Like, I think Pereira actually matches up really well, especially with, you see how susceptible he is to leg kicks, Ankalaev that is. And Pereira's tremendous at that. Like, I think this is going to be a much more competitive fight than people think.
Interesting style matchup, you know, and obviously I spent a lot of time with Ankalaev, more as a training partner in here, and a guy that I've seen firsthand. Here's the chess match for me is I want to see the southpaw versus orthodox and kind of how he handles that situation. Ankalaev being a southpaw, he's going to be closer to the lead leg. So is Pereira going to change his stance to try to match stances? Is he going to show more movement to make sure that lead leg isn't available for Ankalaev to be able to grab? That type of chess match. And is Ankalaev going to want to try to prove that he can strike with him? Kind of like what we thought we were going to do. And Sean thought, like, not me. I said wrestle. I said wrestle. God damn it. So no, I'm very interested because I don't know Alex all too well as the guy that's in the training room. Ankalaev I know very well. He spent 8 camps with us here, so I know him well, and I'm pretty sure of what he's going to come with. But I always wonder too, and here's the thing: what we've seen, and we can kind of look at with Francis, like from an anecdotal point, is what is Alex doing in the meantime? How is he shoring up those things that were essentially holes in his game, right? Like he hasn't had to shown any of this wrestling or shown any of this stuff since the Jan Blachowicz fight. So what's that been, a year and a half now? Maybe longer, right? We fought him in July. So, that's a lot of time for him to be able to work on the grappling and work on the get-ups and work on the takedown defense. So I'm very curious on how this fight goes.
Speaking of wrestling and grappling, Tatiana Suarez is one of the best in the world at doing that, and she's about to fight for a world title as well at UFC 312 against Zhang Weili. I mean, this is one of the most interesting matchups, style for style, fighter for fighter, that can be made in women's MMA right now. Tatiana, many people's eyes, has been the uncrowned champion for many, many years, dealing with all the injuries, and now she's facing a fighter who is at the absolute very top of her game. This is as good as it gets, Eric Nicksick. I'm so fascinated by this matchup. I can barely speak about it.
Me too, man. And I'm just so damn happy for Tatiana and Pachy and Coach Nate and Romy. Just seeing all the things that this poor girl has been through in the last 5-6 years. I remember her having a knee surgery and rehabbing at the PI, and she would come to practice and just sit on the bleachers just to watch practice, just to be involved. It break your heart because this is a high level Olympic caliber athlete who just keeps getting the worst luck, so seeing her in this position now and, her being a part of Extreme Couture and seeing the rest of the team just kind of rally around her, I couldn't be happier for me. She's one of the hardest workers I've seen. So she deserves this. And I couldn't be more proud of her.
Do you feel like she's the only woman in this division who can beat Zhang Weili?
I'll tell you what, man, what I see that she does in the room, not, and I'm not saying this just with training with women, what she does in the room. She's one of the hardest workers, the most determined. She competes against everybody. She gives everyone fits that she goes with. I truly think that, man, like when you see the stylistic matchups, I think Tatiana is the one to beat Weili, 100%.
Cannot wait for that fight. And I wonder what Pachy Mix is going to do next, because he's been very vocal about what's been going on with the Professional Fighters League, and he's wanted his release. And we've seen Patricio Pitbull get his release. We've seen others get their release. I don't know how much you talk to him. Like, what's his mentality? Daily. What's his mentality like right now?
He's bumming. Like, and I don't want to put words in his mouth or say more than I need to, but I'll say from my vantage point, this is a guy that's in his prime. Right. And he needs to be fighting. And he is, to me, if you guys are able to take the kid from Japan and bring him over to fight Pantoja to make a championship matchup, then that matchup needs to be Merab versus Pachy. Unfortunately, those guys are training partners. They're friends. They know each other well. But if you're talking about the two best bantamweights in the world right now, that's Merab and that's Pachy. Stylistically, it's a great fight. It's a great matchup. So, I don't know what his contracts negotiate, what none of that looks like. I'm talking two best bantamweights in the world, and that's Merab and Pachy, and I get to see those guys all the time train with each other, and I think it'd be great for the sport.
Yeah, I don't. He's incredibly good. I just don't know how good he is, and unfortunately, unless he fights in the UFC, we're never gonna know like where he actually ranks. Like, could he be number 1? Could he be number 5? I don't know.
Yeah, and we've had that opportunity. We've got to see the rounds with Aljo and Pachy and Merab and Garbrandt and Stamen, right? These 35ers in the room, you're like, holy hell. And I mean, Pachy makes a claim to be one of the best ones in the world, not only like the talent that we had in the room. This is when Aljo was champion, and those guys training with each other. So, Pachy is that man. And I hope that they get this figured out, but he needs to fight. I don't care where it's at. This guy needs to have the opportunity to be able to showcase his skills.
Yeah, he needs to fight. Johnny needs to fight. Need to see all these guys fight.
Pico.
Pico. Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with him. It's gonna be very interesting to see how this all plays out. We get the GFL going down, so I'm amazed. It's gonna be a crazy year in 2025. Did you watch the draft at all?
What is the GFL? What is this? I saw a little. I got Kai Kamaka. He went over there, so I mean, I'll believe it when I see it, man. I'm unfortunately, we've seen a lot of this stuff come up and it not really pan out. So I hope it does. It sounds like it's a great plan. It sounds like a great idea, but until we get a location, a fight, and all those things lined up, man, I'll believe it when I see it.
And I'm not even talking about just like team MMA in general, but you're wearing the Celtics sweatshirt. I know you're a big football fan and all that. What they want to do is be like the fifth sport. They want, like, if they want to do like a Las Vegas team, they want to be like a team. Like you go and Vegas comes out and supports their team, home games, away games, like all that stuff. They want to legitimately turn this into a team sport where you represent your city and fans support them. Like, can this work in MMA? Like, I don't know.
I mean, it sounds like a great idea. It somewhat reminds me of the IFL days, but those guys train with each other, like Boss was out here training. They would go to California when they had the Anacondas. So, I mean, it's a novel idea. It sounds great, but it's like, you're talking about guys who've been in their careers for a long time. Now you're asking them to leave the team or their coach or whatever that they're comfortable with to go. I just don't know. I don't know anything enough to even give you an opinion on what the hell they're trying to do. It sounds great. The more leagues and organizations to give guys more opportunity, I'm all for it. Pay them and take care of them and all these things where you're splitting revenue. Everything that they're saying sounds absolutely amazing. I'll believe it when I see it.
I think a lot of people are with you on that. Francis Ngannou's next move has been a topic of discussion as of late. I had the legendary Don Davis on for a town hall not that long ago, and he believes Francis will box next and then fight in MMA. Is that how you see it as well at this point?
Pro soccer. He's going to go soccer.
Let's go.
I don't know what he's up to. I talked to him a couple of days ago. We just talked trash back and forth. We didn't say anything that he's just talking shit about iPhones versus Samsung. So that was the last conversation we had. Just talking trash. I sent him the picture of one of my buddies made this piece of art for him and stuff like that. So we didn't talk anything that came about business. We talked about the kids and life and everything else. So, but last business thing he said before he left, for Cameroon, that was kind of what he was hoping for, was maybe to get another boxing match, but nothing was firm.
A lot of people had thoughts about your thoughts and your reaction to Chris Curtis's loss to Roman Kopylov. You had a viral clip almost on your podcast, Eric Nicksick. And I don't know if I've ever heard you talk about somebody the way that you talked about Mark Smith. And you're a very honest and open guy, because as you know, we've talked about this almost every time you've been on.
Sure.
I think all fighters should just cheat at this point or work the system at this point,
100%.
Because nothing will be called. No penalties will be called. No points will be taken. You essentially get 3 fouls before a final warning. And then maybe a point gets taken. It is so friggin' frustrating, but you were not happy with the way Mark Smith handled himself in that fight. I agree with the performance review 100%. Yeah. But since that episode of your podcast Versus Us, check it out. Have you heard from Mark at all? Has he reached out to you in any way?
If he would, I wouldn't even respond. I don't want to talk to the guy, to be honest with you. But I know he reached out to Randy. Randy kind of said something to me about the situation, and Randy's like, I got my guys back. So you want to speak to him, you can come down to the gym and talk to him. But I think he was trying to refute some of the things that I was saying about when he would come to the gym and kind of do his refereeing and stuff like that. Everything I said was 100% true. Everything I said was 100%. Not only was it 100% true, there was tons of people. Randy, there's people in here that can confirm what he did. That has no bearing on him in the situation with Chris Curtis. The problem with that situation was there's been discussions in the back prior to the fight, and this is not the first time. I've had other fighters that we've specifically said, when Sean Sharef was fighting Junior Tafa, hey, this guy is going to grab the cage, not when. He's going, not if, he will. He's going to grab the cage. How are you going to handle this? And he said, it's either a point or I'm going to give you the position. And I'm going to give him a warning right now in the back. Neither happened. within the first 40 seconds of the fight. Go back and watch it. Guy holds himself up by grabbing the cage. Now, whatever you tell me in the back, we all stopped and we looked to see what you were going to do, because we wanted the position. That's what that was the conversation. And I know it's up to interpretation in that moment, but when you do neither of them, then what does that make you, right? So now fast forward to the Chris Curtis fight. Chris Curtis has this long, and because of that, I barely talked to Mark. I barely talked to him. He refereed the Ige fight. We had no issues in the Ige fight, but he comes in the back and he goes, "Hey, anything I should be aware of?" And I go, "What does it matter? Like, why?" I legit said to him, like, "What does it matter? You're not gonna do anything about it anyway." It's kind of giggled, right? So if we're gonna tell you all these things and then you tell us what you're gonna do and then not do it, then why bother? So that was part of the topic. Was Chris Curtis was saying, "Hey, this guy will find ways to stall. Here's our game plan. Here's what we're looking to do. Blah 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 blah." And if and when I start adding volume or getting downhill or gaining momentum, if he tries to stall, how are you going to handle those situations? And he spit out his gum shield. He punched him in the nuts. He poked him in the eye. Right? None of them. And I talked to Jeff Mullen about this, and he goes, "Well, none of them are really egregious." And I said, "Jeff, I want you to look at the way the momentum changed. That's all I want you to look at. Was every time he got 40, 50 seconds of rest, he came right out and Kopylov cracked him." I said, "But before that, you've seen Chris getting downhill on him." So I said, there's you just can't get those things back, which is momentum. And that's why we're asking, hey, why wasn't a point being deducted? The stoppage is the stoppage, whatever, man. It was no one agreed on the stoppage. Like, come on, dude, there's 1 second left, let it go. But that's not what I was mad about. I was mad that we had a conversation about what you would do if there was stalling and you did nothing of the above.
Why do you think referees are so unwilling to take a point? Do you just feel like they don't want to be in the headline? They don't want to be responsible for a fighter losing half their purse? Like, why do you think that is? I know Herb's talked about it in the past, saying like, man, it's tough when fighters are in the position where they have the win and show thing. And if I take a point, like it could cost them the fight. It could cost them that payday. And like, I understand that, but sure. Like in the NFL, pass interference is pass interference. You don't get a warning for that. It's a 15-yard penalty every time. First down.
We had a great conversation. I remember I was talking to Bisbing and Felder. If you went to a half point system, then you could take a half a point. It's not the entirety of the round, right? Like you don't have to make it as severe as taking a whole point where you're going to lose a round, or the round's going to be a draw, or it's going to be a 10-8. So go to a half point system or do something along those lines, right? But our guys were even saying, even Randy was kind of joking about it at practice. Randy's like, well, if you get poked, go ahead and poke the guy right back. Who cares? They're not going to do shit about it. So poke him back. And this is something that happened in the corner. And look, it is what it is. It's part of the sport. But we got in the corner and Chris looked right at me, or, we got on the stool and Chris said, bro, I can't see out of my right eye. And he leans over to Nate and he's like, I'm having trouble seeing. We don't get that back, like that's part of it. And I get it, but, I don't know, man, it's tough and it's just part of the sport, and we gotta buckle up and just keep moving on. I feel bad to a degree, but I get emotional for my guys because I see all the time and the hard work and the effort and the energy that these guys put in. And like you said, that's half his pay down the drain, and mine too, half my pay. So yeah, I'm pissed.
Do you know who's reffing Sean's fight yet?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
How would you react if it's Mark? Would you approach things differently?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't think it would be Mark. I would petition against that at this moment. Like, I think until there's some sort of conversation, because how could he not be mad at me, right? Like any human being, he's going to be pissed, right? So, but yeah, if I see him and he's reffing one of our fights, then I would probably have to talk to Mr. Ratner or Mr. Mullen and ask for a different referee in this instance.
It's a wild sport, always evolving. It's still a baby at the end of the day, but that stuff drives me insane, man. Like sure. Most fans don't understand because they get mad at me all the time when I say like always cheat, and like most people get it. But the first warning is in the back, like in the back when the referee talks to the fighter, like that is warning number one. And most fans, especially the newer ones, don't understand that. Like that's warning one. Even if you want to play the 3-strike rule, if they do 2 things, it should be a fucking point. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, and that's the hard part is when you hear them say the ref, the verbal warning is right now. It's right in this locker room. And then they go out and they do it. And then we calmly, after the eye poke, Nate and myself looked at Mark in round 2 and said, "Hey, Mark, that is 2 fouls this round now, 2 fouls." And he just gave us like the talk to the palm thing. Like, oh, well, all right, man, no problem. I guess, fuck it. Poke him in the eye, Chris.
Yeah. I mean,
and it sucks too, because it's Chris, because like Chris goes into like this fucking hibernation, like this deep, dark depression. He's been fine now, but like of all people for it to happen to, you're like, not Chris.
I know. Fight of the year against one of the best fights of the year against Brendan Allen, and he gets hurt at the end of that, and then he comes back and has this really fun fight with Roman, and that got fight of the night though, right? So he did get a little bit of an extra kick.
Yeah,
he deserved that.
They were happy. Hunter was happy with the fight. Everybody was happy with the fight. So it is what it is. But he's an entertaining fighter. Hats off to Kopylov. He did his job. And that's what I told Chris at the end of the day, man. Like, we can't be in that position to even get head kicked, So that's on us as well. We got to be better in those areas too.
I've known Chris for a long time, and Chris is the kind of guy that after things happen, especially in the immediate aftermath, he says things. Oftentimes they don't come true, but he did bring up the welterweight thing, which I thought was kind of curious, because a lot of his career he spent at welterweights, and comes to the UFC, has been a middleweight the entire time, and has had success. But he's riding waves here. Yeah, is he still thinking about a welterweight drop at this point, or is he just like, nah, I was just saying it?
It's every week. Every week, he's moving to welterweight. So you remember we got brought in on short notice against Phil Haas, and that was the easy opportunity for middleweight. And then he won like 3 or 4 in a row. So we were playing with house money, And then the funny thing on Monday, it was Monday, he was like, I've never been a rich welterweight. I've always been a poor welterweight. The reason why I was a welterweight is I had no money. I couldn't eat. So that's why I was a welterweight, So, I just told him, like, man, you got such great resources at the UFC PI. We went through the same process with Puna, Hele Soriano. We've seen the results that Puna's been having at welterweight. Go do it right. Go listen to what the PI has to say. Let them do all like the DEXA scans and everything that they do, and have that weight cut and that drop, and have it be the best possible. We've seen you in that position anyway, and let's go do it right.
Welterweight Puna is like a new mythical fighter, man.
Unlocked a new character.
What is going on with this man? Is this just what the doctor ordered? Because this is unbelievable.
No, 100%, man. And he's always taken his career seriously, but this has really lit a new spark underneath him. And he had his back against the wall. And I think when guys have their back against the wall, a guy like Puna is gonna thrive. And gave him a little bit more of an ultimatum and taking his career more seriously. And we have to tell him to take days off. Like, hey, bro, you're overworking, you're overtraining. So right now he's enjoying some time off, and him and his wife are pregnant with their first child. So I said, spend as much time as you can, man, because you're not going to have much left between the two of you guys. So couldn't be more proud of him, and finally feel like he's in the right division for his career.
That's good to hear. And Dan Ige, obviously, just the master of the super close fight. Man, how's he doing right now? Is he
he's good.
When's he ready to get back in there?
We're just waiting, and then Aljo is in the gym today, and they're both like, you got any news? You hear anything? Both back and forth. So finally Julian Arosa got booked. He has Darren Elkins. I don't know if that's out yet, but that's what we heard rumor wise. So like our 45ers are finally getting booked, and we're just waiting on something for Ige. Love to have him on that Miami card as well with Arosa, and have the whole team go out there together. But nothing set in stone yet. Funny, because he got a text from Hunter. And Hunter's like, you got anything coming up? And me and Dan are sitting there like, fuck, you tell us. So wouldn't even mind like having him on a Mexico City card or something like that. So we're just, Dan, he's staying ready. He's in the gym every day. I help pads from today, and we had our wrestling practice this morning.
There you go. One last thing I wanted to ask you about, because Islam Makhachev just had it was a weird situation. Ends up fighting Hinata Moicano, gets a quick win, and then goes to the press conference. And right now, with Bilal being champion, he doesn't really have a ton of interest going up and fighting somebody that he's trained with, somebody he's close to. But he was asked about Dricus, and he was like, "Sure, I'll go fight him." And he said in subsequent interviews that I'm not saying I would finish him, but I think I have the keys to victory in order to beat him. So if Sean wins and defeats Dricus and they don't immediately run this back, if Islam calls for a fight with Sean Strickland, how would you feel about that?
I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great. It'd be a fun fight. Islam is a competitor, and that's why he's calling out these people. And, he's a guy that I remember Ali talking to me about 10, 11 years ago. He's like, oh, you think Khabib's good? Wait till you see Islam. So this guy's been, just doing it and competing at the highest level. And when you're at the championship level, that's all you want to do, man, is cement your legacy and challenge yourself and do things. Like, he already fought Volkanovski, who moved up to 45. And I understand the relationship that him and Bilal have. But I think that's also kind of why you're starting to hear them chirp a little bit more about maybe the possibility of him fighting Bilal. It doesn't mean that you guys still can't be friends. You don't like one another. It's a level of being a competitor. And I think I learned that through Randy, right? Being around Randy my entire career. Randy didn't want to hurt you or hurt his opponents or anything like that. He wanted to go against the best and challenge himself and be the competitor that he is and have that opportunity to cement his legacy and be a world champion. So if he did fight Bilal, I think it's a great fight. I actually would give Bilal the edge in that fight, to be honest with you. If he decided to move up to 170 or 185, Islam's going to be able to compete in any of those divisions.
He's so good at this. He's a cheat code in MMA. There's few guys that are like him, and yeah, that'd be a really, really interesting thing. Not just jump up one, but jump up 2 weight classes. That'd be wild.
Crazy, right?
I know. I mean, we always debated whether before Khabib retired, like what would happen if Khabib moved up and fought Israel Adesanya when he was champion. And you really have to think about how that fight could go.
Sure. I mean, look, you look at Conor, it's like he was a 45er, fought at 55, fought at 170. He's able to compete at those levels and, still keep his power and all those things. So, I mean, a guy like Topuria, a guy like Islam, I can see those guys moving up pretty easily and doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just going to make 2025 such a wild year. And the miles are about to be logged for you, sir. Safe travels to Australia. Looking forward to this rematch. And hopefully you get to check out another Celtics game when you get back home to the United States.
Yes, sir. Can't wait, my man.